In today's digital era, smartphones are essential for kids, providing convenience and utility. But as noted in an insightful interview between Simon Sinek and Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist, these devices also bring serious risks parents need to understand. They make suggestions to help fight the negative effects of smartphones in our kids' lives. What follows is a extract and summary from that interview.
Jonathan, huge fan of your work. Going back to all of your TED Talks, um, I would like to start there if I can.
My first TED Talk in 2008 was about left right, why they can't understand each other, moral foundations.
Mhm.
I was already concerned about polarization in 2008, back when social media wasn't terribly polarizing.
Mhm.
And then in 2009, you get the like button, the retweet and share button. You now get algorithms become much more common because now you've got all this information coming in from like and share buttons. The news feed came in a couple years before. So social media really reconfigured around between 2009 and 2012 to become much, much better at throwing gasoline on every possible spark.
There's no going back. The genie's out of the bottle. Like, and the stuff that we're talking about now, the concept of dopamine and dopamine hits and addictive quality, like this is
Yep.
now this is now known. Like this is no longer news. Yet we all know it. We all know that we're divided. We all know that we react to social media the way we do. We know these things, and yet for some reason we still can't control ourselves. We still can't
Mhm.
find
Yeah,
get out of it. You
that's
know,
right.
uh,
The kids, which is the subject of my book, the Anxious Generation, that we can actually solve that in the next year or two. What you were just laying out was how each of us might individually want to change, but yet we're not able to.
mm,
Now, sometimes that's because of addiction, and as you said, I mean, these things are all about little dopamine hits, and that's what makes us crave more. But the biggest thing, I teach courses here at NYU, and I have graduate MBA students, and I have undergrads, and we go through what the life on social media is doing to them, to their productivity, to their focus, to their happiness. And some of them try to quit, but I say, well, why don't you all just quit? And the answer is always the same: because everyone else is on it. I can't quit because everyone else is on it, and they would miss out on too much. And so the way to understand what's happened to us is that these tech companies have put us into what social scientists call a collective action problem. Um, where we face a problem, we don't like how things are, we could change it individually, but each of us looking at the change says, oh, wow, if I do that, I'll actually be worse off. And so most of us who, our kids come to us in sixth grade, typically fifth or sixth grade, and say, Daddy, I need a smartphone. Everyone's got a smartphone. I'm the only one. And that's very painful to hear that your kid is being excluded. Well, the only reason that the other parents gave their kids a smartphone so early is because they also said, everyone has a smartphone. And so each of us might want to delay smartphones and social media. But if our kid is the only one who's kept out, well, then our kid is worse off.
mm,
But if we all do it together, or if even a quarter of us do it
mm.
together, then our kids can't say they're the only one. So if we can do this with the parents of our kids' friends, then we give them a normal childhood. We say, instead of spending all afternoon on your phone, how about you guys get together and go out someplace, ride your bicycles, go buy ice cream, do something together. They would have a much better childhood. They'd come out mentally healthy.
Though I agree, the more I'm learning that it's not the school districts, it's not the teachers, but it's largely the parents. Some schools have attempted to ban phones,
Mhm.
and it's the parents
Yeah,
who make an uproar. I have to be able to text my kid anytime. What
yep,
happens if there's an emergency? We'll call the
yep,
office. They know
yep.
where your kid is. They'll go get your kid out of class and say your grandmother died.
Hmm.
Like they know where your kids are at all
Yeah,
moments. But for some reason, it's the parents and the anxiety the parents have. The
yeah.
pressures are not coming actually from. I'm sure. Look, there's plenty of peer pressure from the kids,
Hmm.
obviously,
Yeah,
but huge amounts of pressure from the parents.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I hear you, but how many of the parents will
Mhm.
collectively say we agree not to give our kids phones
Yeah,
when they have the anxiety of not being able to get hold of their kids
right.
every moment?
Okay, right. So there are other kinds of phones other than smartphones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I totally understand. Look, half of what I'm saying isn't about the phones. Half of it is we have to let kids out on their own by the age of 8 or so. We were all out by age 7, plus or minus. That's when you went out to play with other kids.
Yeah.
That's incredibly healthy. You get into trouble, you get into arguments, but you resolve them. So that has to happen. And I understand. Look, I live in New York City. I started letting my kids walk to school in 4th grade when nobody else was doing that. I wasn't going to let my kids walk around New York City without being able to track them and find them and contact them. But I didn't think to give my son a flip phone. I just said, well, he needs a phone. So I gave him my old iPhone.
Yeah.
But what I'm advocating for is that we solve this collective action problem by saying no smartphones until high school. You can give your kid a flip phone. You can reach your kid. Now, you're right that even with a flip phone, there's too much contact. That's definitely true. So we still have to work on norms. But at least, what's a flip phone good for? All it's good for is making phone calls and receiving texts. It's not even good for sending texts because you have to press the 7 key 3 times to make whatever letter. So if we gave our kids flip phones, they wouldn't be on it all the time, like pouring out their emotions. They'd say, see you at 3, and then they're more likely to use it to meet up and to communicate with one person, not to broadcast out to social media.
Yeah.
So that's an important technological thing. As for schools, you're absolutely right. When I talk to principals, they all hate the phones. It's making their lives miserable. The teachers all hate the phones. It's making their lives miserable. The students aren't paying attention in class. They're literally watching porn and YouTube and gamble. I mean, it's insane that we let kids have the greatest distraction device ever invented. They can just keep it in their pocket. Completely insane. And I say to the principals, why don't you just use phone lockers or Yonder pouches? It's always the same thing, which is just what you said. Some of the parents will freak out. They need to reach their kids. Yes, that's true. Some of the parents will freak out. But you know what? Most parents now are so fed up with what the phones are doing to their kids that most parents would support a phone-free school as long as they know that everyone else is supporting it, everyone else is doing it, and I can reach my kid in case of an emergency. Some will still freak out, but the great majority want to do something. So I think this, again, it's a collective action problem. If we start this together, they'll have to say, you know what? Far more parents want their kid to pay attention in class than the 7 who are always ruining my life by yelling and screaming at me.
Yeah.
What the research shows is that boys and girls are equally they're spending roughly the same amount of time on their phones, about 5 hours a day, just on social media. Now that includes the trick is though that includes TikTok and YouTube, because the kids are watching huge amounts of videos. What really began in the early 2010s is that when they all got phones, they all spent the whole day on the phone. But the girls went for social media, especially visual platforms. They went for Instagram and Pinterest and Tumblr. And the boys went for video games and YouTube. That they tend to be more addicted to those two. And so the girls instantly got depressed. The depression epidemic, it begins in 2012, 2013, as soon as, in 2010, very few kids had a smartphone. It was just coming in. The App Store had just been released recently. So in 2010, the iPhone is not a big part of teen life. By 2015, it's the center of teen life. So what I'm arguing in The Anxious Generation is that between 2010 and 2015 was the great rewiring of childhood, where kids were no longer looking at each other or spending time with each other because they had this incredible distraction device, this phone, which was their portal to lots of companies that wanted to get their attention. So we basically, it's like, most parents would not want their child, their daughter, to have an open window out onto the street where anyone can just reach in and, and see them and take them. But that's kind of what we did in the early 2010s. We said, here, have a phone, go on Instagram, talk with strangers. They'll try to proposition you, they'll try to sell you things, but what are you going to do? It's the digital age. That's where we are.
But parents are struggling as well. Like, all parents, I think most parents are well-intentioned. Most parents,
absolutely,
the vast majority of parents want what's best for their kids. It's okay to be tempted by the magic of the phone, because it's a great babysitter.
Yes.
Giving the kids a device. I went out for brunch and there was a whole table of the parents, and then there's a whole table of the kids, and all the parents were chatting, and all the kids were on their own device.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was tragic.
As I've been reconstructing the history of how did we get here, like
Yeah.
how is it that an entire generation is now sucked into this terrible, terrible way to grow up? How did this happen? And what I realized is you have to put yourself back in the year, let's say 2011, 2012, which is when the big transition's happening. And, for those, I just turned 60. Um, Boy, do I remember the fall of the Berlin Wall, the 1990s, the beginning of the internet. The internet is going to, be the greatest friend of democracy, and it's going to take down tyrants. And then the millennial generation, which grew up with the early internet, they mastered it and they were able to use it in all kinds of ways. The millennials' mental health actually wasn't much worse. It actually was a little better than Gen X. Gen X had the worst mental health of any generation. Their mental health didn't plunge. And so we thought, like, well, the internet's amazing. We all love it. These kids are digital natives. This is the way of the future. And the internet is amazing for democracy. So is social media. And look at the Arab Spring. Look at Occupy Wall Street. So in 2011, 2012, when you're at your parents, let's say you're a 35-year-old parent and you're at dinner and, you think, should I give my kid an iPhone? I mean, iPhones are amazing. The internet's amazing. The kid's going to master it anyway. We thought it was okay.
Yeah.
We thought maybe we're even helping them. Like, let them get a head start. They're going to be living with these things. Why not let them play with it at age 3? I got my first iPhone when my son was 2. And he figured, it's incredible. He got the touch and swipe technology. So you have to go back to that time and realize we didn't know what we were doing. We thought that this wasn't going to harm the kids. And it's really only in 2016, I'd say, that's when a lot of people really began to turn on the internet and social media and see this is causing all kinds of problems. And then, so our discovery that a life online is really, really bad for kids, we didn't actually know that in 2011.
How would you define the social differences between the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation? Like, what are the big markers that make them so different?
Yeah. So the biggest marker of all, is that millennials grew up with flip phones and Gen Z grew up with iPhones. For millennials, they have a lot of overprotection, but they're still really heavily interacting with each other directly, one-on-one, or in small groups. They have flip phones, but with a flip phone, again, you're not going to like pour out your heart on a flip phone texting. You use it to talk to one person or text one person. It wasn't all about group calls. So that's the millennials. And their mental health is actually, as I said, a little better than Gen X. All right. So then we get to 2009, 2010, 11. This is when social media now becomes much nastier. So the millennials got Facebook in college. You had to have a college account in order to get it for the first few years. So the millennials had flip phones and no social media when they were going through puberty. They don't get that stuff until they're in college or later. Mm-hmm. Gen Z, I would define Gen Z as it's the first people who got a smartphone and social media at the beginning of puberty. Mm-hmm. If you go through puberty, not playing with your friends, not talking to others, but with this thing in front of your face. I mean, you walk around, in like New York City. Are you in LA? Where do you live?
I live in LA.
Okay, yeah. So, well, maybe nobody walks in LA.
There's no walking in LA. People drive with their phones in front of their faces.
Well, there you go. So that I think is the big difference, that Gen Z went through puberty, especially, this is especially clear with the girls, but it's true for the boys as well. They went through puberty with a thing that blocked their interactions with others. They don't spend much time with others. And we have a lot of data on this. Kids used to spend a lot of time with their friends. And as soon as you get to 2012, that plummets. It plummets to the point where by 2019, kids were only spending a little bit more time with their friends than their parents were, which is insane. And when they were with their friends, it was a lot like what you just said. They might be physically with their friends, but they're all on their devices. So, as a human being, we're an incredibly social species. You can't grow up without a lot of social interaction, but that's what we did to Gen Z.
So what we're really talking about in all of these things is the restoration of humanity.
Yeah.
Whether it's teenagers spending time with teenagers and they all put their phones in a bucket when they come in the house. It's like, that's
a good connection.
which is, it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing, which is if invite all the kids over for a play
Yeah.
date and call the parents and say, if you need your kid, call me. Here's my phone number because I've
Mhm.
taken all the kids' phones away.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm gonna write this down because that's a piece of advice I'm gonna give to parents. Thank
Right?
you.
Like,
Yep.
like here's my phone number. Your kid's coming over to my house. I'm taking your kid's phone away while they're playing. Call me if
Mhm.
they need anything. If you need anything.
Mhm.
The point is, like any addiction, there's going to be some side effects. You're going to have some.
Exactly. Withdrawal
You're
symptoms.
going to have withdrawal symptoms, and you have to
Yeah.
allow. And the problem is we take these phones away from the kids, and they act out, and then we immediately give it back. And like any drug addict, it sucks and it's awful,
Yeah.
but you got to allow the withdrawal symptoms to
That's
go
right.
through.
Absolutely. Everyone is fed up with the phones. Most parents are fed up. They're
Mm.
upset about what's happening. They just don't know what to do. So all I have to do is first of all, I got to spend the last 4 years thinking about this really deeply and doing a lot of research. And that's what is my greatest pleasure, is really trying to figure something out using the tools of various social sciences.
Mm.
So that was a joy. And then I come up with these recommendations, and they're very easy to do, and there's no opposition. And so here they are. Here are the 4 norms. If we do these 4 things, we can not solve, but we'll really improve children's mental health. 1, no smartphone before high school. 2, no social media before 16. 3, phone-free schools. And 4, more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world, the free-range kids.
Mm.
Those 4 things, they cost essentially nothing, and most parents want to do it. People are ready to act, they just don't know what to do. Gen Z hates this childhood. I have not found literally not a single defense. Like, nobody in Gen Z is saying, no, don't take away social media. No, don't take away our phones. We love our no, nobody is saying that. Gen Z they recognize they're messed up by this. This is ruining their generation. This is ruining their mental health. Why are you on it? Fear of missing out. Fear of being the only one out. So if you have a situation where most of the kids don't like it, most of the parents don't like it, all of the teachers don't like it, no one's happy with this.
Mm.
But we just don't know what to do to get rid of it. And I think that in my book, I basically have been able to say, here's where we are, here's how we got here. 4 norms will get us most of the way out.
Please, I beg of you, reduce the access to cell phones and social media.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're going to take those things away, you must give them something to do.
That builds
something to do. That's right. That's right. And that something to do should be hang out with other kids, do things with other kids.
Yes.
That's what they really need.
Yes.
In summary, here are a few suggestions for parents. 1. No smartphones till high school. If you have to get your kids a phone, get them a feature phone or a flip phone, something without YouTube, TikTok, and the internet. 2. Talk to the parents of your kids' friends. If you and them take the same action together, we will avoid the collective action problem. 3. Delay social media till 16. The depression pandemic under kids is largely driven by social media and the adverse impacts of it. 4. Encourage independent free play with other kids without any smartphones. When kids come over to play and they have phones, put them all into a smartphone box so they don't distract the kids. Let their parents know they can call you on your phone if they need to reach their kid.